In this video, I'm going to prove to you that it is not an offence to steal a motorcycle in the UK. I'm going to show you how recent stories in the press about declining levels of motorcycle theft in this country are probably wrong, and then I'm going to explain to you how I think a simple administrative change could actually have a real impact on what is a very real problem in this country. Now, when I say it's not an offence to steal a motorcycle in the UK, you probably think that I've lost the plot. Of course, it is a criminal offence to steal a motorcycle. Motorcycle thieves can be arrested by the police, and motorcycle thieves can be prosecuted. There are actually two offences with which a motorcycle thief can be charged. The first is the more obvious one, which is Home Office Offence Code 48. This is theft of motor vehicle. The second one is Home Office Offence Code 37/2, which is taking of a motor vehicle without the owner's consent. So I'm actually entirely correct to say that it is not an offence to steal a motorcycle in the UK. There is no such offence code. You may have seen recently that there have been reports in motorcycle news and other outlets that motorcycle theft has actually reduced slightly this year compared to the previous year. Now, I actually believe that that is not correct. The story in Motorcycle News is based on a press release that was released by the Motorcycle Industry Association that said that motorcycle theft has declined by 7.9% year on year compared with last year. Now, when I saw this story in Motorcycle News, I was quite confused because the figures that I've been looking at were indicating that there's going to be an increase this year in motorcycle theft compared to last year. A relatively small increase, but an increase all the same. Certainly not a decrease. So how can there be this much confusion over what the figures actually are? So to explain this discrepancy in the understanding of what is actually happening to the level of motorcycle theft in this country, let's take a look at how we arrive at our figures. For a period of 4 or 5 years, I went through an arduous process of submitting freedom of information requests to every police force in the country to get figures for the number of motorcycles that had been stolen. This process was time-consuming for me, it was time-consuming for the police forces that had to respond to it, and the figures that we were getting back weren't particularly useful. The main problem was that we were only getting patchy responses. Some forces would respond with figures, other forces wouldn't. And the reason for this is very much because of the way that the theft is recorded. Everything is recorded as theft of motor vehicle. So in order to determine the number of motorcycles that have been stolen, each police force would need to check every record of theft of motor vehicle to see whether the motor vehicle was a motorcycle. This is obviously a time-consuming process, and many forces felt that it would take far too long and cost too much money to be able to provide the information back to me, and therefore they refused the freedom of information requests. So we had a situation where we had a patchwork of some forces giving us answers, other forces not giving us answers. This was not a very satisfactory way to have a real idea of the amount of theft that was going on in the country and where it was worst. Now, as MAG, we are members of the Motorcycle Crime Reduction Group, and through the Motorcycle Crime Reduction Group it is actually possible to get access to figures from the Police National Computer. And when you look at these figures, they are consistent as they give you figures for the entire country. Every single police force uses the Police National Computer, their figures are on there. So if you can get the permissions and the access to get the data from the Police National Computer, you're on to a winner. So that is what we decided to do. We would stop doing the time-consuming freedom of information request, and we would use the figures that were coming out from the Motorcycle Crime Reduction Group. Provided that we attribute the information to the MCRG, they are happy for us to use these figures and to quote them. So that is what we've been doing for the last few years. So if I'm looking at the same data as the MCIA, who are also quoting MCRG figures, how can I be coming up with a different answer to the question of is motorcycle theft increasing or decreasing in the UK? What I found is that neither of us is actually wrong. It comes down to a different way that we're handling the information. It took me quite a while to figure out what was going on, I had a number of conversations with police contacts and with the MCIA and the MCRG members to figure out what was going on and why I was coming up with different answers to the MCIA on the same data set. The way that the MCRG produced the data is by taking a snapshot of the PNC live database on a fairly regular basis. The output from this is the number of motorcycles stolen by month by police force area over a period of time which is set by the user. Now, I have frequent meetings with police officers, police and crime commissioners, MPs discussing the issues around motorcycle theft. And very often they want to know quite detailed answers in terms of the statistics, which they don't actually have access to themselves. So what I do is I place all the data that is coming out from the MCRG into my own spreadsheet, which I can then use for analysis, breaking it down by police force area or over any particular timescale that I want. So the way that I collate this information into my spreadsheet is that each time the MCRG issue a new snapshot, I just take the new data and add it into my database. I don't need to re-update the existing data because it hasn't changed, obviously. But that's where I've been going wrong. The existing data has actually been changing. If you take a look at this graph, it shows the way that the data is built up over a period of time and a number of snapshots that are provided by the MCRG. The first snapshot, which I received in April of 2023, just covers the first 3 months of 2023. There is then a second snapshot that was supplied to me in September of 2023. Now, as you can see, the figures for the first 3 months of 2023 have actually increased from what they were first reported as. You can then see, if I overlay the next report that came out, which was in the March of 2024, that the figures have gone up again. This continues, this process of increasing the numbers historically continues. 31st of July, these are the figures that were presented in the snapshot, and then again in November, or the most recent set of figures that have been released by the MCRG, you can see that although the older figures seem to be stabilising and sticking to 1 point, the new figures are still increasing. So given that I take only the first time that a number is reported for any given month and add that to my data set, you can see the difference in this graph between what the MCRG snapshot, most recent snapshot, has shown. When you stick a trend line through this, you can quite clearly see how they've arrived at the conclusion that motorcycle theft is declining. But if you take a look at the figures that I report in my spreadsheet, which is shown on this orange line here, you can see when you put in the trend line that I'm actually showing an increase in the number of motorcycles that are stolen. So how can this possibly be? The first key to explaining this discrepancy over a period of time of the figures is to understand what the PNC database is and how it operates. It is a live system that is updated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by the police force. It is designed to be like this because the police force need to be able to know any vehicle that they're looking at any given moment in time, whether that is at this point in time listed as a stolen vehicle. So as soon as a vehicle is reported as having been stolen, it is added onto the PNC database with a stolen marker against that vehicle. Then any police officer at any part of the country can consult the police national computer and determine that yes, this vehicle that they're looking at has been stolen. So this is exactly the job that the system is designed to do. It was not designed as a way to gather statistics for the historical theft of motorcycles. The fact that motorcycle theft numbers seem to be increasing over a period of time, when I've spoken to police contacts, is actually entirely plausible and logical. What can happen is that a motorcycle owner doesn't necessarily know immediately that his motorcycle has been stolen. So the report of the theft may happen a week, 2 weeks, even a month later. Possibly even more than a month. It could be up to 6 months. If for example, you leave your motorcycle neatly tucked away in your shed and you go away on holiday for a month, and it's only when you return from your holiday that you notice that your motorcycle has been stolen. That is going to give you a late report. But of course, when you report the theft, a little bit of investigation will be able to track down exactly what date it was stolen on, and they enter it into the PNC data from the date that it was stolen, not the date that it was reported stolen. So this gives you this delay where effectively every month more bytes get added to the number stolen that month because we're waiting for those reports to come in. So this is why these numbers are changing. But this means that every time, the first time that the numbers are reported for any given month, the first time they are reported, they are going to be smaller than what they ultimately become, which means that the most recent figures are actually depressed or reduced in number compared to what they will develop into at a later date. This means that the system has got an inbuilt bias to make it look like the numbers are going down because we haven't got the full number of most recent months as to how many have been stolen. So this method of effectively historically entering data for previous months actually creates a bias when we're doing this snapshot approach to producing the figures. What it does is it means that the figures for previous months or months further in the past will always be higher than they were when they were first reported. You don't need to take this as any kind of criticism of the MCIA, the MCRG, the police, how it's all done. It is just a better understanding of what the figures actually mean. And realistically, we can't be 100% sure, because this is a moving feast, the figures don't remain steady, we can't be 100% sure as to whether or not a small increase or a small decrease is the final answer. Now, I personally think that the way that I've been collating the information probably gives you a more accurate picture than constantly going to a new snapshot with the inbuilt bias that I've just described into these numbers. But the bottom line is, I don't really know whether or not the numbers have gone up or down. The MCIA and the MCRG do not really know whether or not the numbers have gone up and down. But most worryingly of all, the police, who also use this same information and this same method for drawing information from the PNC, also do not know if the number of motorcycle thefts is going up or down. So what's the benefit then of creating a separate Home Office offence code for motorcycle theft? In my mind, this would make life an awful lot easier. We would be able to end this reliance on the PNC data, which we know is a moving feast, and go back to using a freedom of information request system, but this would then yield answers for every police force with relative ease, because they are recording everything as a separate vehicle category of the motorcycle. There is no remedial work for them to do when they get the FOI request to go through and filter the answers of the stolen motor vehicles. They have a figure that is ready to hand, easily produced and reported on of the theft of motorcycles. This means that we would then be in a position to very quickly and very easily get to an accurate figure for the entire country, broken down by police force or any other system that you want, that tells you whether or not the levels of motorcycle theft are going up or down. And obviously, as we all know, crime and criminals, they're a fast-moving bunch. They change what they're doing on a regular basis, and the police have to rush to keep up. So having up-to-date and accurate information is important for the police. It's important for us to be able to explain to riders in a certain location that, yeah, at this point in time, the number of motorcycle thefts in your area has gone up, therefore pay extra vigilance and make sure that you keep your bike locked away properly all the time. This kind of information could be invaluable. It could actually help to reduce the numbers of thefts that take place, and it could also help the police to actually recognise when they need to put more resources in their area into dealing with the issue. We all know that police forces are stretched, which means that they have to prioritise what they're dealing with. And if motorcycle theft is spiking in their area, they need to know that as soon as possible so as they can apply the correct level of resource to dealing with the issue in their area. It also has wider impacts in that I will be able to then break down an analysis of the numbers of prosecutions and the outcomes of those prosecutions specifically for motorcycling. We know that there's a certain number of people who get charged with theft of motor vehicle, but we don't know how many of those relate to motorcycles. Are we catching as many motorcycle thieves as we are car thieves, for example? The interventions that the police need to do to reduce motorcycle crime are not exactly the same as they are to reduce car crime. So if it's a different intervention that is required, we need to know in any local police force area, is it a motorcycle theft problem that they've got, or is it a car theft problem? If we can't tell that and quickly get to that information, they can't make the right decisions. So it's my belief that by having a separate offence code for theft of motorcycle, we could actually get a far more effective response to motorcycle theft. That's good news for me, it's good news for the police, it's good news for everybody. So I hope that you found this video useful, that you've got an understanding now of why it is not an offence to steal a motorcycle. You've got an understanding of why the figures, whilst everybody's doing their best, nobody can be 100% sure what the figures are really supposed to look like. And we've got a bit of an idea as to what might be a sensible solution to actually solving the problems that we've got with reporting the numbers of motorcycle theft. If you find this kind of information useful, please do subscribe to the MAG YouTube channel and make sure that you keep up to date with everything that MAG is doing to help improve motorcycling in the UK for everybody.